Welcome to AI in the Boardroom, where the risks are real. Now, Tim and I are going to hopefully provide a view of where AI is generally useful in governance right now and where the hype is running dangerously ahead of reality. So I think if anything you take from today, it's that. Now, Tim, I think let's start by giving a quick context around who you are as the face behind Blackhall and Pearl and how you started this AI journey, and then I'll do the same.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. This is a conversation I'm really looking forward to. Right?
Me
So
too.
Blackhall and Pearl is a board advisory business. We've been dabbling. We've been around for a while. We do a lot of ASX board performance reviews, board advisory sort of work as well. But we've been started on the AI journey about 10 years ago, and trying to get directors to do sentiment analysis on board packs, and quite unsuccessfully, I have to say. But about a year ago, AI in the boardroom just exploded, absolutely exploded. So we're just at the precipice of that now. So
And I feel right to say that you did a PhD in AI for effectiveness of boards as well, didn't you?
I did a doctorate in board performance analytics, and I have done quite a lot of study on AI, although it's really hard for anyone to keep up, the amount of things that are
Right.
coming out day in, day out. So I'm by no means a sort of a doctorate of computer science.
Well, so in a similar vein, I suppose, and with it moving at such a pace, I've spent about 30 years of my career in high growth product companies such as MYOB, Aconex, Oracle, and in the last couple of years, Prospection. And that was leading through companies scaling organizations to international expansion and also being in lots of boardrooms. A couple of years ago, I went to the other side, and I'd been doing non-for-profits for a while, but I started doing commercial boards and board advisory work. And in terms of my AI exposure, I think Prospection was an AI first company because they got hold of healthcare claims data from PBS, for example, 13 years ago, and were doing AI long before people kind of knew about AI through GPT and the likes of Claude. I think that's when people start to go, oh, this is what AI is, right? So it's something I think you and I have both been exposed to in a different form for a number of years before it became mainstream. What's probably interesting is we've both developed AI tools for the boardroom, and that's probably something that I think we'll talk about as well during this series. But maybe we also touch on how we actually met, Tim. That might be a bit of context there as well.
Oh yeah, so I was actually at a a sort of function, a chairman function, which I don't know how I got invited, but I got invited, and there was a lady sitting next to me who said, "You've got to speak to Kirsten. You've got to speak to Kirsten." And I'm so thankful. I actually was at another function recently where I saw her again, and I actually had to thank her as well for the introduction.
I think we found these kindred spirits in passion for AI, and I've had the pleasure of working with you across, kind of talking about your various product offerings. And it's ultimately about we're both passionate about how do we get directors to do their best work and
Yeah.
lift the effectiveness of boardrooms. So ultimately, I think that's what we're all here for, and hopefully, what we cover today is going in that direction as well. Now, you've been in the ASX boardrooms for many years. Where are you actually seeing that AI is making a difference?
I think that if you think about the problem statement for directors, like if I could just go into that just for a bit, the problem statement for them is that, they're under a lot of pressure. Their board packs are getting bigger. On average, board packs are increasing, I think by 30% over the last sort of 6 or 7 years. And we see some directors, getting board packs of 2,500 pages, right?
Mm.
So as a problem
Hold on,
statement,
two and a half
two and a
thousand
half
pages.
thousand pages. The average
Wow,
board pack
right.
is technically around sort of 260 pages, but still that's a lot of reading for people to do if you're on two or three boards, right? And better practice is you're meant to read it two or three times. But where we see the other problem is that the board packs really don't relate to the strategy of the business, and directors aren't having good conversations about what really matters. They're getting swamped in detail. So another way I often describe it is they're drowning in information and they're starving for insights, and that's what the AI tools can do is just help them focus on what matters.
And are you seeing AI make a difference to that yet for these board directors?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, board directors generally, sort of the boardrooms generally are technological deserts, right? So where there's a lot of boards sort of, looking at iPads, looking at basically PDF documents on iPads. That's the technological leap forward, and it hasn't really advanced more than that. That said, there are a couple of boards that are really using and developing AI in the boardroom quite effectively. Initially, it was things like, company secretaries just trying to précis the board packs, but now they're actually using, bespoke or sort of, trained large language models to try and understand their own board packs. Sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not, but it's better than nothing. So even if it's not perfect, it's a little bit better than it was. So they're all thrilled to be using some version of AI. And I think the old type of PDF on iPads won't exist within a couple of years. The agentic AI models will just overpass it.
Of course, that comes with all sorts of challenges as well. With risk, with risk comes reward, right? It's really interesting what you're saying there too. From a product side, I've seen with people directors coming onto Vizory, and we've had some ASX directors, obviously not as many as what you deal with, Tim, but really the biggest thing I've noticed is it surprised me how quickly directors go from skeptical to dependent once the AI can show them exactly where they got the answers from. Because, and if it doesn't, then that's a problem. But in terms of if you have traceability in your system and you can see how the AI came up with the
Yeah.
answers that it did, that's the key to establishing trust. So it's been very interesting seeing that turning point with the directors that I've been dealing with as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was a lot of suspicion initially, and I think when you enter a field where you got compliance versus convenience, often convenience wins over compliance. And there was in the early days directors and lots of management putting their board packs into public domain models, which has been sort of problematic. So having bespoke models or bespoke playgrounds for directors is really important, and there's a burning passion for a lot of directors to get a tool that they can get their hands on.
Yeah, and just to make it easier, right? Like as you said, if you're having to review 2,000 pages, there's risk in that you're just
Yeah,
not taking it in. Like even if you read everything, are you really retaining those whole 200 pages?
yeah.
So we'll talk a bit about, we've got a few things around that and what you can do. But what do you think is the biggest misconception about what AI can and can't do for boards?
The biggest issue that a lot of boards are facing is it can replace them as a director, right? An AI is not a legal person. A director is a legal person. And I think the misconception is that from people outside the boardroom is that directors are just going to be lazy and not read their board papers. Um, that's assuming that AI tools do one thing, which is help them read their board papers. But those organizations, and I know a lot of, there's law firms doing it, there's lots of retailers doing it. Um, the directors that I've spoken to, what they're saying is it actually makes them a better director because, it helps them focus on the things that really matter. So when they get into the boardroom, they're actually having better conversations because they're better prepared.
It's so true. I had one very high profile chair say to me, I think I was telling you before, Tim, that he said he had a very dim view of directors using AI and said, I'd never allow it. It's way too risky. And that's what they've been hired to do. They've been hired to think, not for the AI to think for them. And my response to that was, look, in all due respect, I think you'll find that you're not managing your risk appropriately if you're not using AI. And that was, for me, that was the moment where I realized this isn't a technology problem, this is a mindset problem that is boards are facing.
And I think the technology's been there for a long time, and it's actually far in advance of the adoption in terms of its use cases. I don't think we've even scratched the surface of how directors and boardrooms can actually profit from AI.
To that point too, do you think boards are actively asking about AI or waiting to be told? What are you kind of seeing the balance at the ASX level?
Yeah, I think they're actually directors are pushing, and they're pushing really hard for some sort of response, even access to the tools that management have access to, right? Because boards, aren't getting access even to the generic models that management are actually using right now, never mind a bespoke model for the board. Those boards that are actually developing board agents, they're getting enormous benefit from it. But I still think they're leaving a lot of stuff on the table because they're doing it from a technology perspective, not from a subject matter expert perspective. So you can get a board pack, from 1,000 pages to 500. It still may not be any good.
What does good AI adoption look like in governance versus just bolting something on?
I think, if you think about, for me anyway, if I start thinking about the use case, it's, go to the problem statement and then where can AI solve it? And one of the problem statements is the board packs are too big, right? So how do you help management write better board packs? That's a great application for AI. How can I prepare as a board director for an argument or a discussion in the boardroom when you can actually say, well, what would a regulator say? What would a strategy director say? What would a finance director say? What would a transformation? What would a product expert say about this paper? So you can actually prepare before you go into the boardroom. So I think there's three use cases, which are probably three phases of AI adoption before you get into the boardroom, while you're in the boardroom, which is the most complicated, and after the board papers are actually prepared.
Really fascinating what you were touching on there too, because I was reading this article that was zombie GPU effect, and I'd seen this in practice too. And basically, what it's saying is that many enterprises have paid all of this money for infrastructure, but they get a fraction of the intelligence because the data architecture isn't ready. And I think boards face this same problem. They add an AI tool, but the underlying pack process is broken. So the AI just summarizes chaos faster, basically. So it's really like what you're saying, Tim. I think ultimately for AI adoption to be successful, it needs to start with the underlying processes and not just the tool. And the pack has to be worth analyzing before you analyze it.
100%. And it's that old adage, garbage in, garbage out sort of thing. So, you can get a big garbage pile and you can make it a small garbage pile, but, which is easier to carry, but it's not better. It's just not better. So I think, having the right architecture, the right infrastructure, and then the right tools around it, not just simple summarization tools, but tools that really dive into those business drivers that make the conversations better in the boardroom. And often we say to directors, they only have two responsibilities, right? One is they hire and fire the CEO, and the other one is they ask questions. And the input for them asking questions is great information and insights, not lots and lots of data.
And we wanted to keep these episodes short and sharp, Tim. So we're going to hold there. We've talked about the current state. In the next episode, we're going to switch gears a bit and discuss what's actually changing. So let's come back for that. And it's going to be another fascinating discussion, I think, as well.